Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency, 504-556-0809 or davemietteINSagency.com.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
Cnc Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, Cnc provides patient-centered care for your entire family. Cnc Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We are also live streaming on the WLAE-TV YouTube page. You can check that out as well. We're live from our Ponce Train Production Studios. And of course, as always, got a great show for you today. Jeff Duncan of NOLA.com and Fox 8 Sports joins us on the program today. We'll talk Saints, LSU, Tulane. Also, we have some time. We'll talk Pelicans as well. Jeff, how are you, bud?
Oh, man, doing great.
The weather's incredible, huh?
We've got this cold front that finally came through, and I think we're due some good weather.
Yeah, we are. We are definitely due some good weather. And just kind of weird that for the first time in a long time, that fall kind of falls right on when fall starts, right? Normally we're in the 90s around this time. But a great respite, especially after everything we've been dealing with over the last few weeks with the storm out and everything else. So glad to have a little cool breeze here in the city.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. Sports are always kind of an escape for a lot of people. And so when the teams are doing well, it's a great diversion for people.
Right.
With everything we're going through right now in this region. And when it doesn't go well, it just kind of exacerbates everybody's misery.
Yeah, everybody gets a little. The mood is not as great as when they're winning. But we'll talk a bit about that as we go forward. We'll start with some Saints, then we'll get into some LSU Tulane. As I mentioned, we'll try to get to the Pelicans. Before we get started, you're back with NOLA.com. Tell us about that. You've continued your situation with Fox 8. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing, and also the book.
Yeah, well, look, I'm excited. You know, I feel like I never left.
Right.
You know, I was at the Picayune and NOLA.com for 20 years, and it feels great to be back. I can't tell you how many people have come up to me since I've come back and expressed congratulations to me. It really does underscore and emphasize the importance of local news and the relevance in our market.
It's true.
It still resonates. That brand, the Times-Picayune, is still important to our market. So I'm excited to be back. I'm still working, obviously, at WVU and Fox 8, doing my analyst work there. Great team there as well. And, the book's coming out in paperback, the Peyton and Breeze book, second edition in paperback, October 13th. So we're excited about that.
Who's got that on their bookshelf on NFL Network? Somebody's got one of the analysts has your book.
I think it might be Mike Garofalo.
I think it is Garofalo. That's got it. You know, actually, I was up in Nashville for 2 weeks at my daughter's house. We evacuated there, and my son-in-law has the signed copy of your book. So I'm doing my radio show from his office, and right in front of me is the book there. So it's getting around, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, the sales have been great.
Yep.
Very grateful for that.
And of course, you can learn. Watching what's going on now, if you read the book, you maybe have a little bit more insight to maybe some of the pitfalls that the Saints are going through right now because Breeze is not here.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Understanding how the Saints offense operates and the responsibilities between the offensive line, the quarterback especially, a quarterback of Drew Brees' experience. He was masterful at this exact thing, getting the Saints into the right play at the line of scrimmage before the snap. Often, almost routinely, the Saints have 2 play calls in the huddle. And when they get to the line of scrimmage, the quarterback checks to whatever play, run, pass, could be 2 passes, whichever one they want to do at the line of scrimmage. There's a communication to that.
Right. Based on the defense.
Yes, what he sees. And Drew Brees was a master at that. And I think those are the little sophisticated, nuanced parts of playing quarterback that he was so brilliant at that you can't see as a fan or a media member that we all kind of took for granted. And now these things are starting to reveal themselves slowly over time of what it's like to have a Hall of Fame quarterback and then to try and replace him.
And there's no doubt. I mean, again, from making the line calls, which he did, as you mentioned, getting in and out of plays that again, looking at where the defense is or the anticipation of what the defense is going to do at snap, getting out of those plays, putting them in a better play. The coaches know, but we'll never know how many times, again, he kept the Saints out of a bad play. And, of course, we're seeing that now. Look, an example of that was this weekend. Where, again, this offensive line has been one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, and they looked ordinary. They look bad, and they look confused, and that's something we have not seen. And a lot of that is a byproduct of a lot of things that Breeze covered up when he was here. Yeah,
John Stimcombe and Zach Streif have both told me that Drew Brees made them look so much better over the years than their actual physical talent was because of his ability to get them in the right protection. And that's a collaborative effort. It's not just the quarterback, it's the offensive line, it's the center. And even Sean Payton said this week, the plan. Sometimes the plan, I mean, they have a specific protection call for a certain play. And we saw it, I think it was the second snap of the game when Jameis Winston got sacked for an 8-yard loss by Hassan Reddick. You had Hassan Reddick, a very athletic, fast defensive end, coming off Jameis Winston's right side, and you're asking Adam Troutman to block him from the left side of the formation, come all the way across and get to him. That's, and Sean Payton will tell you, that's on us. It's their job to put players in position to be successful. He didn't do that in that play. That's a coaching problem. So there was a lot of dirty hands.
And then the other part of it is, again, and even the Carolina Panthers players talked about this, Breeze's ability to get the ball out quickly, to be decisive, know where the football has to go. I mean, Jameis Winston is still learning this offense on the fly. Well, so again, look, when you look back over the history of Breeze here, how many times did he get the ball out quickly? That also made that offensive line maybe look a little bit better because he was decisive. He knew where he was going to go pre-snap, where, again, other quarterbacks just have to learn that. And there's a learning curve here now, but you're doing it on the job.
Yeah, and any quarterback probably would pale in comparison to Drew Brees in this system, especially with so many different things that are put on the quarterback's shoulders. And this is probably very similar to what Patriots fans were going through last year, watching Cam Newton replace Tom Brady and seeing the struggles. We're seeing it play out here.
No doubt. We've never seen, I can't say we've never seen. It's rare that we see the Saints offensive line dominated like it was. Do you think that is going to be an anomaly and that we'll see a bounce back this week from these guys? Or is this going to be an ongoing struggle now, especially with McCoy out?
No, I think it was a convergence of factors that led to that performance. Not just the offensive line, just the whole team.
As a team, yes.
Being on the road for a number of weeks, missing some key starters, the coaches that weren't there. Carolina being, I think, better than people think they are. I think Carolina had a really good game plan.
I agree with that.
I think they played with incredible intensity. It looked like they wanted that game more, and that makes sense. They lost 4 in a row to the Saints in Carolina. I think they lost 9 of the last 10 against them overall. They had incentive. The Saints are coming off a huge win, emotional win against one of the best teams in the league. There's human nature involved in all this, and so I think all those things kind of played into this. I'm not concerned about the offensive line at all. I think it's the strength of the team. most of what we saw was mental assignment errors in pre-snap communication.
Yes.
Not necessarily the talent.
Yeah.
I think they get that other stuff ironed out.
I agree. Plus, again, Joe Brady there, knowing the Saints offense somewhat. And then, of course, again, him being fired up to try to beat his mentor as well, right? I mean, there were a lot of factors there when you look at it from Carolina's standpoint on again, the plan they had, post-Breeze, what they were going to try. And unfortunately for the Saints, most of it worked.
And here's the other thing I would say. I don't think this Saints team, and I may be proven wrong, but I don't think they're going to end up being a really good come-from-behind team. I think their formula for success is going to be defense, running the ball, controlling the clock, and winning with the play-action passing game and taking advantage of Jameis Winston's arm strength, just like we saw in Green Bay.
Right.
Get the lead. Now you keep the defense off balance. You're dictating things with the running game.
Right.
And go over the top deep. They hit the big ball, the big play. That's the formula.
Right.
They were the exact opposite. They were behind 17-0.
Right.
They're trying to come from behind. They're getting dictated to. And part of that also was the defense losing. I've always said this. Offense, you can scheme up. You can X and O your way to manufacture things sometimes. Defense, you got to have dudes. You got to have players. And the Saints were missing their best pass rusher, their lockdown cover corner, their one of their best linebackers, and then their best jack of all trades hybrid player in C.J. Gardner.
Who was going to take Christian McCaffrey.
Right. So they're missing key elements there.
Right.
And that contributed to them get behind early.
Yes.
Opening drive, they just got buzzsawed right through. They kind of figured things out, but by that time it was too late. So I think all these things kind of contributed.
Right. And look, I mean, I don't want to say I'm going on a limb here, but I think it's a different game next time around in the Superdome.
Oh, 100%.
Okay? I think it's a definitely different game. I think the Saints obviously will be pointing to that game. And you mentioned running game, and I do want to mention this. Of course, they don't have the big back now. And that's one thing that I kind of noticed in this game here. Again, they tried Tony Jones Jr. To run him a little bit, to try to physical runner. They really don't have that physical back on this team right now. Is that a deficiency do you think that may haunt them throughout the season, or something you think they can overcome?
No, I don't see it as being an issue. I think they could have had Jim Brown in there on Sunday, and it wouldn't have mattered. I mean, first of all, and Sean Payton made a good point of this, is they didn't have the ball very much. I mean, they weren't converting third downs. They just the number of touches weren't there for anybody. So if you look at Taysom Hill not getting the ball very much, I mean, he's going to be probably their power back.
I would think so.
You know, but you know, they didn't get the ball enough to Alvin Kamara. Everybody didn't get the ball enough because they just didn't possess the ball long enough.
Right. Concerned about the way that Winston reacted under pressure. Looked a lot like Jameis Winston in a Buccaneer uniform, and a lot less like what you guys saw at training camp, what we saw in Week 1.
Yeah, I'm concerned about it. I think everybody should be concerned about it. I mean, that is the track record that he's put on tape.
Yes.
We've seen that before, and that was part of Carolina's game plan. The defensive players after the game said their entire game plan was to rattle Jameis Winston. You got to remember, I mean, they've seen this guy before. They've played against him a lot. In the NFC South, Phil Snow has game planned for him. The last time he played against the Carolina Panthers was over in London, and he threw 5 interceptions. And they sacked him, I believe, 6 times. So they knew if they could get him rattled, get him off his spot and his landmark, he would struggle. And that's true of most quarterbacks.
Of course.
But I didn't like the decisions that he made. The one before halftime was egregious.
It was.
They were at the 37-yard line. Aldrich Rosas can make a field goal from there. Just throw it away. These are the things that haunted Jameis Winston in his career. He's got to get past. And if he doesn't get past them, he won't be the quarterback very much longer.
I'm with you. And that was – he looked great in Week 1, but things were going well. You're always going to be able to see what type of player a player is when they're under pressure and things are not going well. And that's the thing, again, when – he started looking like bad Jameis, you're like, okay, is this going to be a situation where we're going to see this all year long? Look, there's a long season. It's 2 games in. We know can't get too high or too low in the first quarter of the season, no matter how the Saints look great in the first game, second game, how bad they look. We'll see how it goes. But he's got to be a guy that takes care of the football for this team to be successful.
Right. They're going to win, like I said, with defense and the running game. They can't give away possessions like that. Look, they were probably going to lose that game anyway, but that's just disturbing to see him doing some of the things we saw in Tampa. I mean, there was even the play that he was fortunate where they called it a forward pass.
Yes.
But we've seen those kind of things happen too, the lack of pocket awareness, understanding when just to give up on the play. He said all along that he learned these things from Drew Brees. I think that's easier said than done when you're in the line of fire.
That's right. I mean, again, sometimes, most of the time, when you're under pressure, you revert back to, again, what is your habit of what you're doing. It's hard to break that. And, again, hopefully, again, again, that's going to be drilled into his head. It'll continue to be that way. Hopefully, again, he'll realize that, again, you got to live to play another day, especially, again, as you mentioned. That's points right there at the
and momentum. Right. Give him a little momentum, a little confidence.
No doubt. Okay, no doubt. Turner flashed. Peyton Turner. He flashed. Again, a guy that looked pretty good in preseason. He flashed, especially with Davenport out. You get an opportunity to be able to see him play. I'd like to see a little bit more of him this week. But he looked pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. That's a silver lining to the game. His first action, 5 tackles, 3 for loss, and that's critical for his evaluation. He's getting in the backfield on running plays. That was something that the staff has worked with him on. He's a big, tall, rangy guy who tends to get upright very quickly and lose pad leverage and lets offensive linemen get under him, especially in the running game. I thought we saw some progress there, the way he played the run. And that's going to be, I think, ultimately the most the deepest position on the defense, the defensive end position. When they get back Davenport, Tano Passignon also is a very good player.
Yes,
so they've got depth there, Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan. So that's a position that you feel really good about.
Adebo struggled a bit, but it wasn't like he wasn't in the same area code. But again, we went up against a savvy receiver in DJ Moore.
Yeah, and I brought this up on Twitter this week. I mean, what's funny is I think everybody after a loss like that tends to start grasping for the great white whale that caused the issues. And the word that started coming up all of a sudden was separation. I started seeing this a lot. And
with the wide receivers?
Yeah, that became like the narrative. That's the problem right now. And I pointed out on social media, first of all, that some of the best receivers in the NFL are among the worst separators in the league. DeAndre Hopkins, look at his numbers. I would love to know what Marcus Colston's separation number were. Well, that's not his game.
Look at Michael Thomas.
Right. Michael Thomas is not one. And in that game, DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson had 2 of the lowest separation totals in the league. Darnold was putting the ball in the money. That's what Drew Brees was a master at.
Yes.
Putting it where his player could catch it, no one else could, even though there isn't separation.
Right.
That's part of the NFL. There's not going to be a ton of wide open guys. And you've got to be able to, 1, be accurate with the ball, and 2, be able to make catches under duress. And we saw Carolina do that. We didn't see enough of that from the Saints, but also Jameis Winston just didn't have time.
No.
I mean, he was turning around on his drop, and there was guys right in his face.
Yes, no doubt. And from a Debo standpoint, look, I'm going to be honest with you. He's proven to me over at least the first 2 weeks, he's an NFL corner.
Oh, no doubt.
Okay, he's going to need some seasoning, but he's an NFL corner.
Well, I think you got to feel good about what they did to bolster that position.
I agree.
Getting Bradley Roby, who I thought played fine. Trufant has been
He's played well.
Yeah, and now you're going to get Lattimore back probably this week.
Right.
So now all of a sudden, that's a position you feel pretty good about. I don't know of too many teams in the league that feel any better about their cornerback
Especially from where they were coming from, right? When you look at, look, we kept waiting all off season for them to make a move at the cornerback position. They didn't do it, and they ended up getting a pretty good bargain basement situation when you get a guy like Roby to come over, work out the deal, or against not killing you on the cap. And then, as you mentioned, Trufant comes in, a guy that was just cast away, and he's been a guy that's been able to fill in as a veteran. And Adebo's played pretty well as a rookie. CJGJ, Peyton said that there was a chance that maybe he might have played last week. You think there's a chance that we'll see both Lattimore and him back this week?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to today or Wednesday, how he runs in practice. He's got to be able to run. That's one guy that the way they use him.
He's irreplaceable.
Yeah.
There's just not another player on that roster.
No, they don't. They don't have anybody. They used a hodgepodge of defenders in his role, and he's one of their better defenders. I'll be surprised. He's one of these guys that loves to play. He's kind of a gym rat, and I know it was probably killing him. He he went through pregame workouts with the trainers, so it was that close. It was a game-time decision.
And how about passing? You mentioned him earlier. He has been he's been a guy that as much as they lost in the interior of that defense, his ability to go inside and outside, he's been a find for him.
Yeah, and he fits exactly what the Saints look for. They want these tall, rangy, physical ends. They don't want the Dwight Freeney's, the undersized, quick guys off the edge. That's not what the Saints do defensively. He fits their prototype there. And, Jalen Holmes, a guy that played a lot in this past game, is another guy. He was a fourth-round pick by the Vikings, 6'5", 275. That's what the Saints want in their ends. And but Tano, I think, also is a guy they were very high on coming out of the draft. So it made sense for them to go get him.
I thought Bond struggled a little bit this week. Going back and looking at it. Okay.
He got attacked.
But he does. And look, again, he's going Christian McCaffrey. So, I mean, that was a tough one for him as well. Overall, I think the defense is in good shape. Obviously, again, it wasn't a good game for them, much like the offensive line. But I think you're going to be able to hang your hat on this defense overall this upcoming season.
I think it will be the best defense they've had under Peyton. The way I look at this, if I want to go big picture, if I'm a Saints fan and I'm looking at the bigger picture of the season, I think they should just look at this in increments in this first 5-game increment before they get to the bye week.
Okay.
I think they need to be no worse than 2 and 3 for sure.
Right.
But 3 and 2 is what you'd like to get to. Then you get Mike Thomas back. You get David Onyemata back. Suddenly you start getting back some of your better players. And, you're full
some of these
force.
guys that are on 3-week IR will be coming back as well.
So that's the way I would look at it. This early season schedule is very manageable. They've got a tough one this week in New England. But get to 3 and 2, get healthy, get rested up during that bye. You'll be back home for a few weeks by then, and then you can attack the last 2/3 of the schedule.
I don't want to make excuses because Sean Payton won't make excuses, but they got to be a little road weary right now. Okay, when you talk about leaving New Orleans for the hurricane at Cowboy Stadium, and then now at TCU having to move their situation there, playing in Jacksonville. And I know that Peyton liked the extended training camp type situation. These guys have been in hotel rooms now for almost a month. And then now the COVID-19 outbreak with the team didn't help because those protocols, again, don't allow camaraderie. You have to separate. You're getting your meals in a bag. You're eating them in your hotel room. So, again, it goes against everything that Peyton was trying to be able to establish this past week now in a COVID-19 protocol situation.
I think more than anything, Eric, that is a mental thing. Just being out of your element, being out of your routine over an extended period of time. Every New Orleanian, every person in the Gulf Coast can relate to that. It's not necessarily something that you even notice is happening to you, but over the course of weeks, suddenly your focus, I think your energy and your drive are all affected. And I don't think it was any coincidence, and I wrote this week in the Picayune, that we saw what happened to Tulane the same weekend that we saw what happened to the Saints. I just think those are things to be expected after you've been displaced from your home and out of your routine for weeks.
And there had been rumors out there that the players were ready to come home even before the COVID-19 outbreak.
Oh, they are.
Okay, that again, they're restless.
Ready to come home.
They're ready to come home.
Yeah, I mean, everybody would in that situation.
At this point.
My colleagues that are over there are ready to come home.
Right, of course.
I've talked to them. Everybody wants to sleep in their own bed, get back, check on your house. And for the players, they have families.
Right.
And they've got family members over there with them, and they want to get the kids back in school. They're no different than anybody else.
So many rumors out there about how COVID-19 ended up getting into the facility over there with the coaches. No matter what happened, it definitely affected everything they did last week. You saw the drop off without having those coaches.
Yeah, I think it's small. It's small, different things that add up.
Right.
The fact that it happened on the offensive side of the ball, I feel like that was the best side of the ball it could happen to, just because you had Pete Carmichael and Sean Payton, who basically run the offense themselves. It was just a lot of things, I think, that contributed to that loss. Sean Payton, I talked to him about it, and he said it didn't affect their game day operation. It was mainly just, we all see this when we watch a game. They come off the sideline, and there's a coach showing game film of what happened. He said they had to do that in groups as opposed to positions, and just things like that. But again, you're out of your routine, you're out of your element, and that's what these are. These guys are creatures of habit.
Well, and also this is a team with a tremendous amount of pride as well. 128 yards total offense, lowest in the Peyton era. 6 first downs, lowest in the Peyton era. You got to believe they're going to be loaded for bear this week against New York Giants.
Yeah, they'll have a much better.
I'm sorry, the New England Patriots.
Yeah, against the Patriots, and that's the problem is they could play well and lose this game. I mean, That's a tough place to play. The crowd's going to be hostile. I think Mac Jones is only going to keep getting better. And you're going against one of the best defensive minds, probably the best defensive mind that's ever coached in the league. He's going to see on tape the struggles the Saints had. And they're going to test them right off the bat. And Sean Payton knows that. Sean Payton knows Bill Belichick really well. There's a reason these organizations have made a lot of deals over the years. They respect each other. They respect their talent evaluation, how they conduct themselves. So I think this is going to be a fascinating game to watch from a chess standpoint, mentally, how these two teams execute their game plan.
Right. As we look over your shoulder, the Superdome getting cleaned finally. Unfortunately, on Tuesday, a fire on the roof in the was the gutter box. There was a pressure washer that caught fire. Again, as we speak, as we're doing this show today, they're actually repairing it and painting it. So again, but the word is from the Dome, this will not affect the New York Giants game at all.
No, and I didn't think it would even when it was burning yesterday and everyone was panicking. That roof is concrete and steel. It's not going to burn, and that was a very superficial type of thing. I compared it to a grease fire in your kitchen. You know, it looks really bad. It looked very bad because we could all see it. In New Orleans.
Visions of the Cabildo.
Yes, it's part of the skyline of New Orleans, but I wouldn't think that's going to impact it in any way other than I know at one time they wanted to get the roof redone and painted in time for this game, and it's probably not going to happen now.
Probably not. Okay, what are your thoughts on Sunday? Do the Saints rebound?
Well, I think they're going to play better, no doubt about it. I don't know if they're going to win this game or not. A lot's going to depend on who they get back, who's going to be in the lineup. They certainly can win. I think they'll give Mac Jones some issues. He's a rookie quarterback. They've had a fairly easy early schedule, the Dolphins and Jets. I think the Saints will challenge the New England offense like they haven't been challenged so far. So I really envision this being a very low-scoring game, kind of a field position battle. You got to like that with the new punter, Blake Gillikin. He's been a weapon so far. We haven't seen Roses really have to make a clutch kick, but he might have to make one Sunday.
And usually in the NFL, the desperate team wins. And in this case, a desperate team that was embarrassed the week before, you got to figure they're going to come out with a little bit more intensity and attention to detail after what happened last week.
Yeah, again, they could play well and still lose because I think New England, this is a very good New England defense, one of the better ones they've had, and it's going to be a hostile place, and the Saints have not had much success in New England. So historically, this one will be tough, I think, but the Saints are going to probably have their A game.
Yeah. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest today, Jeff Duncan of the Times-Picayune, NOLA.com, and Advocate. Also, Fox 8 Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Quick word from our underwriters. We'll come back. We'll talk LSU, Tulane. Hopefully have enough time to squeeze some Pelicans in there as well as they're getting ready to start training camp. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Stick around.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Experiencing rough weather with a bad roof can be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be.
Suburban Roofing, because when it comes to roofing, there is a difference.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher from Fox 8 Sports, also Noel.com, Times-Picayune. Jeff Duncan is our guest. Jeff, Tigers now 2-1, 49-21 winners over Central Michigan. They beat Central Michigan like they should have beaten McNeese the week before. But yet again, still not playing the type of ball that a lot of people believe they should have been playing since the beginning of the season against UCLA. The tempo was much better. That was something that was concentrated on all last week, and I thought it showed that Max Johnson was much more comfortable not having to wait on a play and get the tempo up, much like we saw with when Joe Brady was there, and also when Joe Burrow was there. And I thought he went through his progressions a little bit more. And look, the RPO is perfect for what he does, and they stayed with that a little bit more. They almost have to, because the offensive line is just not very good, and it's going to be an issue, I think, all season long. We have we've not seen the improvement that's necessary, and I think it's hard to be able to learn on the job when it comes to SEC play.
Well, we're going to find out very quickly now what this team is.
Yes,
getting into the meat of the SEC West, and that's not a good place to have offensive line issues. The front sevens in that division are the best in college football. So I think that's going to make or break this team. I said all along, going into the season, the question isn't talent. The question is, how do we incorporate two new offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator? How do they handle their schemes and implementing them and making adjustments as their stuff gets on tape? And we start, and these SEC coordinators that go against them start game planning for them. And we're going to find out. I mean, you get two guys in two critical positions that have never done it before.
Right.
And so that to me was exposed in the opener against UCLA. And I think with Chip Kelly, a veteran offensive mind, I think they won that game mainly on a game plan.
Right.
And I think we're going to find out more about this team, because these last 2 weeks were about kind of correcting mistakes, using almost like exhibition games to get better. And I liked what I saw from Max Johnson. I like the progress I saw. I agree with you. He looked more comfortable, more decisive. But it's easier to do that when you're going against the Central Michigan Chippewas.
There's no doubt.
We're going to find out how he adjusts in Starkville.
No doubt. Now, with that said, let's go back to the offensive line, because it's an issue. Again, I don't know if you can be one-dimensional in the SEC. You have to be able to run the football. And they have not been able to consistently run the football. They have not consistently been able to pass block for the quarterback as well. You almost have to get your quarterback again, moving with that offensive line right now. And then, of course, there are some that are questioning, okay, who are the backs for this team? I like what I saw out of Kiner last week. He looks like, he's an SEC back, but as you mentioned, he's running against guys that are playing for Central Michigan, not playing for SEC teams. So we'll see how that plays out. But to me, the key to the offense is the offensive line. If they are not able to protect and open up the holes for the running game, then this is going to be a very, very difficult season for this team, as we saw last year in the first 5 games of the season.
Yeah, I think the next few weeks we're going to find out. Mississippi State, Florida, Auburn, all these games I think are winnable, but they also could lose them. And that will define this season, and will also determine just how hot Ed Orgeron's seat is.
Yes, and I believe it's hot. I'll be honest with you. I believe it's hot, and I think the byproduct of that hot seat probably kept some of the better coordinators away from LSU, which is why they went with 2 guys that were unproven, that had to learn on the job. And look, I talk about all the time it's tough to learn on the job to be mayor of New Orleans. It's tough to learn on the job to be a coordinator in the SEC. Okay, that's very difficult. And we saw that with the first game with UCLA, and now there's film on this team for the SEC coaches to be able to dissect.
Yeah, and here's the thing, going back to your point about the hiring, it's a small world in the coaching fraternity.
Absolutely.
They all talk, and people are looking for security.
Right.
They're looking for long-term security. There's not much of that in that profession, but they're certainly not going to take a risk if you don't have to. So when we saw Ed Orgeron miss out on Freeman from Cincinnati, he goes to Notre Dame, he's going to a much more stable environment.
Right.
Might not be a better job, but it's more stable. And so that, in effect, is what Ed Orgeron faced this past offseason. Same thing with Ryan Nielsen. He's much more stable here with Sean Payton, who's been here 16 years, than to take a chance on potentially something falling apart. Those are the challenges that Orgeron's got to overcome, and he's got to be able to recruit and hire top-notch assistant coaches to fill out the staff. That's something that he's got to get to be an elite head coach.
There's no doubt about it. When he was at his best, he was the CEO of the team and allowing, again, coordinators to coordinate and position coaches to coach. When he's got to do more than that, that puts him really kind of out of his realm a bit. And that's where, again, you start to see this team struggle a bit.
Well, just look at down the road in Tuscaloosa. Nick Saban loses Steve Sarkisian. He brings in Bill O'Brien, NFL head coach, to run the offense. I mean, that's not the case in Baton Rouge right now. That is where they have to get if they want to compete in that division against. That's who they're competing against.
Right, absolutely.
And that's the standard and the measuring stick. And I think until they get there, and I'm not sure that they're going to get there under Ed Ogeron.
Well, and I would agree with you there. The difference is at Alabama, Saban churns those coaches in and out. He brings them in, he works them to death, and they're out of there, moving on to the next job. In a lot of cases, that is a better opportunity. But there's also, as you mentioned, the stability of the job there. There's no stability at LSU right now.
Yeah, and Alabama is viewed as a launching pad for your career. You go there and you end up getting the Texas job, as Steve Sarkisian did. It's proven. And that's not the case in Baton Rouge right now. It certainly was for Joe Brady and Dave Aranda, but he struggled to replace those two.
2019, incredible year. Last year, very, very disappointing year. All the coordinators and coaches that have been let go. Again, all that starts to add up when you start to look at the sum of the parts of Ed Ogeron's tenure as head coach at LSU. This is a defining time now when you get into SEC play. And there are some that don't think he will make it if he doesn't turn this thing around, that he won't make it through the season. The question that I've had since the beginning is, okay, who on that staff has head coaching experience? And there is none. So then you wonder again, if there was something to happen in midseason, who would step in? That's a hypothetical question. But again, this seat has been hot now really since last season.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I'd be surprised
if they make a move.
Scott Woodward made a move midseason. I would be surprised at that. Maybe in part because of what you say. But I think if this team, if he goes 8-4, I think he's fine.
Okay.
I think anything worse is when we start to wonder if he's going to survive.
Right. There's another part of this as well. An incredible recruiting class sitting in the wings here.
Right.
Okay.
But that's always going to be the case at LSU. I've always said that. I remember that was used as an argument for years about keeping Les Miles.
Right.
You and I can recruit at LSU. It is an elite place to play. It's a sexy place to play. There's no better environment than Tiger Stadium on Saturday night. Recruits all over the country. It reminds me a lot of what Bobby Bowden had going at Florida State in its heyday.
Yes.
That was the place to go play. It was such a great environment.
Yes.
That's what LSU has going for it. They have control of the state of Louisiana. That now has to be given credit to Ed Ogeron and Les Miles.
Yes, agreed.
They've locked it down, but they have an advantage that no other team in the SEC does. They have no other SEC competitor.
One state school. That's it. Offensive line is an issue, but the skill positions are not. They have some really good receivers on this team. Okay, I mean, when you look at Besh, just trying to get him on the field in any position you can, what he's been able to do. We saw Smith last week be a guy that came in and played well. Brian Thomas. So they've got some really good receivers on top of Booty.
And it's really continued on what we've seen, a recent tradition here.
Right.
We talk about it being DBU.
Right.
Wide receiver. I mean, how many top receivers have gone to the NFL?
That's Louisiana, right? We've got skill position players here. Okay, defensive linemen. The one thing that we don't grow here is offensive linemen.
Right.
And that's where you have to go, and you have to be a nationally recruiting type situation to go out and get those offensive linemen. Because you can look at it right now. Look at what is it? Guillory, Smith, Roy. They're moving now Mason Smith to the outside at the defensive end position because they've lost Andre Anthony. You look at those guys. Those are studs right now. Young players that are already making a difference. Now, again, they're stepping up in SEC play. But those you could look at them and see those guys can play at an SEC level.
I think they've got to learn how to develop offensive linemen, too. It doesn't necessarily always have to be the five-star elite recruit along the line. We see it throughout the NFL, where guys like Teron Armstead were no-star recruits, but they develop. You've got to be able to find those guys. And what sometimes happens, I've talked to coaches about this, when you're at a high-level school, you don't take those kind of guys because you don't have to. And sometimes I think that is a blind spot. And we're seeing, and I know we're going to talk about Tulane here in a little while, but we're seeing a very savvy coaching development at at Tulane. And that is the ability to develop linemen that are maybe 2 and 3 stars and getting up to that level. I think LSU's got to do a better job there because they're getting good enough talent. They're just not developing them.
They got embarrassed by Mississippi State last year. I mean, totally embarrassed. This is a game where, again, if you're LSU, you're pointing to it. Now, I'm a little concerned because, again, Orgeron has come out and said they didn't work enough on UCLA. That's the first game of the season. Now, he says this week they work an all off season on Mississippi State and being able to try to solve the air raid offense. We'll see how that plays out. They're good enough on defense to be able to do that. They didn't show that last year.
Yeah, that was back in the period where they were just trying to figure out what they were doing. They were getting in their own way. I would think they would have that ironed out, but they're going to get tested in this game.
Yes.
I think it's going to be fascinating to watch how they defend them on the perimeter. We know with Ricks and Stingley, they got 2 of the top cover corners in college football.
You should be able to lock down on the outside.
Right. So then we'll see how they handle the rest of it. But it's going to be a fun game to watch. It's going to be hot. There's no doubt. I mean, I know it's not as bad right now, but it's going to be a really fun game to watch. And I think LSU's got to win this game. If they lose this game, I think they're in serious trouble because you got Florida and Auburn on the horizon.
And the crossing routes killed them last year in this game. I mean, killed them in that game.
A lot of that's communication.
Right.
A lot of that's just technique and assignment.
I agree with you. The seat will get much hotter if they do not win this game this week against Mississippi State.
Right.
And that leads us again to Tulane. Loses to Ole Miss 61-21. Again, that 1 hour 45-minute rain delay did not help at all. From what I talked to Gary Smith of NOLA.com this week on the radio show, pardon me, and he mentioned that Willie Fritz brought the entire team to the game because he felt those guys had worked hard in Birmingham, and when they get to Ole Miss, they didn't realize again how small the locker room was. So we had this very, very small locker room with the entire team there, having to wait for 1 hour and 45 minutes. Again, and that added
not easy,
No, and then of course what we mentioned, this is the attrition of everything that's happened over the last few weeks for this Tulane team. But they ran into a team that was sending a message to college football. Ole Miss was sending a message to everybody that, again, they're contenders in the SEC. And also, again, when you look at Matt Corral, that was his Heisman game. I mean, I kept waiting for things to change. The wet conditions early, I thought Tulane struggled with it, but Ole Miss didn't. And then of course, eventually, again, they kind of got used to the conditions, but again, still continued to pour it on. What was it? 7 of the first 9 series, they scored touchdowns. So again, before you know it, Tulane's literally drowning there, and the inability to be able to come back there. But that's an SEC team, and an SEC team that's on the rise. Tulane has had a pretty good season. It was surprising because of what happened at Oklahoma. I actually thought they had a chance to either, again, make it close or possibly upset them. I think that Ole Miss sent the message that they want to be in the upper echelon of the SEC this year.
Tough assignment. I blame Troy Dannon with the scheduling. You think about it, who's had a rougher early schedule than Tulane, playing, at least defensively, having to go against 2 of the probably 5 most creative offensive minds in college football. Lincoln Riley and Lane Kiffin, 2 Heisman Trophy candidates at quarterback, and Spencer Rattler and Matt Corral. I mean, that's tough.
It is.
And it added up, and they just got behind the 8 ball. And I think you're right. I think Ole Miss is a lot better than people thought before the season. And I think Lane Kiffin is recognizing, hey, we've got an opportunity here. We can get in this mix because we're in the SEC West. And they just ran into a buzzsaw. That's all there was to that. I'd throw that game out. Let's move on to the American Athletic Conference.
Yes.
See if you can win some of those 50-50 games.
Right. And as far as Pratt goes, still, I mean, a very good quarterback. But I mentioned on the radio show, as I'm sitting there watching him get just beaten and broken, reminded me of Archie Manning back with the Saints. I mean, just no time to throw the ball, constantly on the move, trying to be able to make plays with his arm and leg to move his team forward, and then sometimes just hitting again an Ole Miss brick wall. But it was a bigger step up in class than I thought it was going to be, Jeff. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, well, I think the Oklahoma game gave everybody a little bit of a false impression of the talent difference. And I also think Ole Miss defensively, that's the biggest leap they've made.
It is.
They were giving up 40-something points a game last year. That's not going to be the case.
The new scheme is really working for them.
Yes, they're much improved on that side of the ball. and they're playing with confidence. You can see they believe in their scheme. They're going to be formidable this year, and I just think it all kind of added up on one of those games for Tulane.
It doesn't hurt. It doesn't help when Dorian Williams gets taken out with again the targeting call that again was iffy at best, and then again the speed and misdirection kept Tulane on their heels the whole game.
You couldn't stop the run either. They got run on
constantly.
Yeah, it was just kind of an avalanche, I thought, in that game, and they just never could slow them down.
Right, 707 yards of all total offense, and really again could have been much worse if Kiffin doesn't call the dogs off in the fourth quarter.
They basically sat on it the fourth quarter.
They really did.
Got some players in, and Lane Kiffin, we all make fun of him. He's kind of a kooky guy, but he knows offense. And he's a tremendous offensive mind. I was at the Arch Manning debut on Friday night at Newman High School and talking to a college coach on the sidelines, and they said, look, say what you want about Lane Kiffin, but he's one of the 3 most creative, dynamic offensive minds there is in all of football, and he's showing that at Ole Miss right now.
Some people believe, to the Arch Manning situation, that, again, the ties of Arch to Ole Miss, again, with his grandfather and, of course, with Eli, and the fact that Kiffin is such a offensive genius, there may be a lean there for the kid.
Well, I don't think there's a lean yet for anybody. Just in talking to people around the family and around his recruitment, I think he's wide open. I think he's interested in a lot of teams. And, I mean, remember, he's just starting his junior year. He's got a lot of time. He wants to make this decision probably next spring. But right now, I don't get a sense that anybody's taken the lead. He's just now going to visit schools. He went to Georgia last week to see their game against South Carolina. I know he's going to Texas. He's got a Clemson game. Clemson had their offensive coordinator on the sidelines at Newman on Friday night. This recruitment, I think, is just getting intense, and just now where I think they're going to start eliminating some schools.
Okay. And look, I have not seen him in person, from what I understand, getting bigger and stronger, right?
Yes.
Based on from last year to this year already.
Yeah, noticeably bigger. He's 6'4" now. That's certainly taller than he was just a year ago. And I sat for a quarter with Archie, and Archie said he's been working with a personal trainer, so he's bulked up. You can see that. And he's so athletic. I think that's the thing that will open people's eyes when they see Arch play. He's got Archie and Cooper's athleticism.
Yes.
So he can move around. He's more athletic than Peyton and Eli, and his decision-making's on another level for anybody in his age group.
Right.
You know, he's been programmed to play quarterback, and he's going to carry that team pretty far. I think they've never won a state title at Newman in football. I think they're going to do it with Arch Manning.
A lot of LSU fans hoping that maybe he's looking their way. Some believe that LSU probably won't be in the mix. Just you, because you've been close to the situation, your thoughts?
Well, LSU's doing everything right in the recruitment of him. I mean, they've got 2 of his teammates committed to go there, but they've got to get their shop fixed.
Right.
He's not going to go somewhere, and it's no different. LSU's no different than anybody else he's looking at. If there's turmoil and instability and maybe a coaching change, it's not going to help matters. So I think the Mannings and everyone involved around Arch Manning is looking at stability and also where is he going to learn. And there's another factor that I think people underestimate is he wants to go somewhere where he can enjoy the environment, where he can enjoy the campus. I know people think they roll their eyes at that. That's not the case. Arch Manning's probably going to get drafted in the NFL no matter where he goes. It's almost like Zion Williamson. He could have gone to Delgado and I think gone first in the draft. And I think that's the case with Arch Manning. If he goes to, say, Virginia, I don't think it's going to change his draft prospects.
No, I would agree. Let's get back to Tulane for a moment because they take on UAB. Finally back in New Orleans. UAB's a pretty tough team. Your thoughts on the Greenies taking on Alabama Birmingham this weekend?
I think they get a big bounce-back game. I think they'll be very motivated, much like the Saints we talked about. You have one of those games like that, all you're thinking about is getting back on the field. They came out of that Ole Miss game fairly healthy. They've got to get a couple of guys back, but I think this is one of those games you got to get on the schedule to define your season. It's going to be a close game, I think, but coming back home, playing uptown for the first time, has got to be a wind underneath their wings, and I look for Michael Pratt to have a big game.
The future of the American Athletic Conference, now that the Big 12 has gone in and poached teams from them. I know there was a lot of hope that the American Athletic Conference would be the one doing the poaching of some Big 12 teams. That did not happen. And then maybe Tulane's role in this, in maybe the expansion of the conference, or possibly moving on to another conference.
Yeah, well, I think it's completely wide open right now. I think there's a lot of moving parts, a very fluid situation, and I know it's first and foremost on Troy Dannon's mind because college football is driving this.
Yes.
TV in college football is driving this shifting of the landscape, and I don't like it. I think it's unfortunate that it's come to this in college sports. They kind of made that deal with the devil probably 2 decades ago with TV dictating things, and that's what we're seeing happen here. I think the New Orleans market helps Tulane's cause.
I agree.
I think their competitive rise under Willie Fritz helps them as well, but it certainly didn't help that the top programs in the American went to the Big 12.
Right. And of course, there had been some talk where, in the past, maybe about the ACC, just basically because of the fit of the school. But again, some believe that the ACC won't even look their way.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. There's a lot of factors. It goes beyond just football.
Right.
The other athletic programs have to match up as well. There's TV, eyeballs matter. But I think the future of college football is not going to be determined in the next 2 years. I think there's going to be shifting and positioning by some of these major conferences. And it feels to me like the elites are wanting to branch off again from the non-elites. It's very much like a country club.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of money and a lot of greed involved.
Before I jump to the Pelicans, I did not ask you about Mississippi State LSU. How do you think that turns out this weekend?
I think LSU will win that game. I don't think it'll be easy, but I think they get out of there. I like that the game's during the day, actually.
Yeah.
It's much easier to play there than playing at night in Starkville. So I think they get out of there with a win. I'm still not convinced Mississippi State, Mike Leach are a good marriage. Feels like it's still kind of a learning process there. And this is not a great Mississippi State team at all. I mean, they were down. Don't forget, they were down big to Louisiana Tech.
Yes,
in the opener, had a miracle comeback.
Right. All right, let's talk some Pels. Pels go to camp next week. Again, it's hard to believe. Basketball season's right back again. Christian Clark of the Picayune today had a very, very enlightening story about the situation behind the scenes with the Pelicans, with David Griffin, Zion Williamson. A lot of people don't realize this is after this season, the off season is the first chance for Zion to be able to again extend his deal, and on the way to getting again the largest deal for a second contract. For a guy that's coming off his rookie deal. And there are some that believe that Zion is going to forego that and then try to become a free agent a couple years after that. Your thoughts on where the Pelicans are right now? David Griffin, if we talk about Orgeron on the hot seat, David Griffin is on the hottest of hot seats right now based on what has transpired over the last few seasons, mirroring a little bit of Ed Orgeron, getting rid of a couple coaches here, having to pay those coaches off to move on, and then of course just not a complete roster, and of course main thing is not winning.
Yeah, look, it's been a little bit of a rough transition for him. Immediately having to fire Alvin Gentry 1 year into your tenure, you bring in Stan Van Gundy. That didn't work out. So there's a lot of stops and starts here. And meanwhile, the clock's ticking on the Zion Williamson tenure.
Right.
And he's wanting to see progress. Right or wrong, in the NBA, these superstar players have a lot more control than they do in any other professional sport. And they're wanting to see. I mean, a guy like Zion Williamson's never lost in his life. And he suddenly gets here and he's losing more than he ever has. This team has to win this year for a number of reasons, but mostly I think to keep Zion Williamson around. If any player, and no player ever has, I think we should point that out to everyone,
no one
has ever turned down signing this extension because it's in their financial best interest.
Right.
So much more lucrative for him to play in New Orleans. And credit to the NBA and the Players Association for incentivizing teams to be able to re-up with their star players.
Especially in smaller markets.
Right. It's a huge issue. I think there's another conversation down the line for what they need to do to continue to enhance revenue sharing to make markets like New Orleans competitive. But in this instance, Zion Williamson is one of the few players I think that could turn it down because of his off-court marketability.
Right.
The deal he's got with Jordan Brand is one of the largest ever. He can make a lot of money off the court to where he can compensate for the lost wages he'd lose by not signing it here. So I think that's a concern. I think it's a legitimate concern. When you read Christian Clark's story, that's what I came away with is the strained relationship between Zion Williamson and the organization.
Right, and which again is where you don't want to be. With again, we've seen this with, not to an extent with Chris Paul, but not as much. But we've seen with Anthony Davis, and now we see it again with Zion Williamson.
Right, and I should point out, Zion Williamson, everything I've heard and all my reporting is validated, is a very good guy. He's not one of these prima donnas. And unfortunately, our American basketball system and culture tends to produce this.
That's
just
true.
Almost through osmosis, because of the way the system's set up.
AAU sets that up.
Players come and there's a sense of entitlement. This kid doesn't really have that, so it's rare. So for him to have some issues, I think is very concerning and troubling that it's gotten this far down the road and has not been corrected.
Another thing with Christian Clark's article today, again, the maybe dysfunction that we heard from the Zion Williamson camp within the organization, with David Griffin, with maybe some guys that, or some people that work within the organization who wanted to remain anonymous, that again, it's not hunky-dory behind the scenes right now.
Well, I think they had some issues with Zion right off the bat with how they handled his return from his injury.
No doubt.
We all were there covering that at the time. It was mystifying why he couldn't play. He was on those minutes restrictions, and the kid wanted to play. I mean, it took forever to get him on the court, and that was frustrating for him. And how it was managed and handled, I think, had good intentions.
No doubt.
But again, there's a communication breakdown there. One of the strengths I've noticed with the Saints over time, Mickey Loomis, Sean Payton have great internal communication. You never see these kind of things happen. That's why the Michael Thomas story was so rare and so explosive. It just never gets to that point. We see this kind of continuing with the Pelicans. It's something they've got to get under control, especially with that guy.
Yep, I would agree. Jeff, as always, certainly appreciate the time. Tell the folks one more time about the book, how they can get it in paperback.
Yes, you can get it right now. Be online. You should be able to pre-order right now, Amazon.com, or you can reach out to me on my social media account. Let me plug something real quick.
Sure.
Next week, big story coming out. I've got along in conjunction with Lee Zurich at Fox 8 on the future of the Saints and the Pelicans. Long-term future plans, I think, will be really revealing for people wondering just what happens to these two organizations long-term.
Okay, good deal. Looking for that. That's next week on Fox 8.
And in the Times-Picayune.
And in the Picayune. Okay, and the Picayune. Good deal. That's Jeff Duncan of Fox 8 and also the Times-Picayune. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there are plenty of ways to catch this program now. You can catch us on our reverse rebroadcast at 6 p.m. On tonight. Of course, also on 10 p.m. tonight on WLAE-TV 2. Also, don't forget you can catch us on Friday nights, 9 o'clock Pelican Sports Television, 10 o'clock on WLAE. Also, 2 a.m. on The Deuce on Saturday morning and 5 p.m. on Pelican Sports Television. Always at ericasher.com, always on the WLAE-TV YouTube page, and always on our social media platforms, at Eric_Asher on Twitter, Eric Asher on Facebook. Catch me on the radio, 106.1 FM, weekdays 4 to 6. You can listen live at ericasher.com. Also, the iHeartRadio app, the TuneIn Radio app, and the podcast available on all major podcasting platforms. Anchor is our home base, but we're on all major podcasting platforms. Thanks to Jeff Duncan for joining us on today's program. Also, thanks to our underwriters who support this program. Please support the underwriters that support us, and also to the WLE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, also Alex Chacon, and the best director in the business, William Hill. I'm Eric Asher. For Jeff Duncan, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.